How you doing? I'm Joe Kuzman. I'm going to show you a little bit about drip irrigation today. So, drip irrigation is all about plumbing. So, got to have our water source. Here it is. Comes up through here. It's always good to have a shut-off valve right at the front, so we can turn it off and on as we need. And then also just have our regular hose if we need it for kind of daily use. I'm a big proponent of having as many shut-off valves as you possibly can. So we have it coming from the main water source to our first junction. We're going from a regular hose to the irrigation hose. And you can see there's different adapters that you have here. And basically allows you to attach to the regular 1/2-inch irrigation hose here. So we take out here, I ran over it way too many times with a lawnmower, so I decided to bury it. So we have it buried from here to the garden. There's my little girl, Elise, messing with all our irrigation poles. But I'm all about being able to utilize, once we get the water source out here, as many options as we have. So obviously we're doing drip irrigation, but I want to be able to do other things as well. So come down here, got a splitter. So you got the main water coming in from what we just described to a timer, okay? So this timer, I have it running right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this is the main irrigation source here, so we can set up on a timer. But then I also wanted to just be able to do general watering of the garden, so I have another line set up where I can turn it off and on. It goes to our setup over there. But basic idea, like I said, is plumbing. So it comes in here, and then the main water line goes down through the center of the garden. Again, 1/2-inch irrigation tubing, just like we have here. When we set up this raised bed system, put it all the way down through there. And then, so it comes down, and then I got T's to basically tee off on the other side. So there's a T here, T here. I decided to go a little overboard and put individual turn off and shut off valves on each one of these. That way, depending on what we're growing, we can decide what we want to irrigate or not. The one other thing I want to point out is that all these different connections, well, they're made to hold very well. Every once in a while, you just need a little extra force to hold them together. These little worm gears are fantastic about just holding those all together. The other thing I will say is that black tubing, when it gets hot, and it gets hot here in Kentucky, this will expand and contract. So even if you have everything set up and it's fantastic in, say, May, June, once it comes July, August, and it's hot, especially if the tubing is exposed, it's going to expand and contract. So just be aware that sometimes you're going to have some blowouts with your tubing. So that's one of my words of wisdom is, even if everything's running fine, you can't just forget it and set it, or set it and forget it. You need to come back and check it periodically to make sure that everything's still running and you're not having any kind of blowouts. But the other thing I will say is that drip irrigation, you're trying to save water. So at the end of the day, you have to plant based on where the drip irrigation is. So you'll see on each one of these tubes, there are, so I'm going to pull this up here, and you'll be able to, let me turn it on here. And you'll be able to see where the water's coming out, okay? Where the water's coming out is basically where that drip irrigation is working. If there's not water coming out, then that's not where you should plant. So basically what you need to do is you need to put down your drip irrigation, figure out where the little water holes are. You can see one here. This is what they look like, okay? That's where you know the irrigation's coming out. So you need to plant based on where the irrigation set up. We're not doing soak hoses here, so we're not trying to water the entire beds. All we're trying to do is water exactly where the plants are. And at the end of the day, that's how we're going to get water savings. So we had this whole bed set up the same way, where we can turn off and turn on each one of the beds based on the irrigation. But that's one of the things I learned very early on, was I tried to plant and then figure out where the irrigation was. But you need to basically set the irrigation up and then plant where the irrigation is, because drip irrigation is not going to soak the entire bed. That's not the objective. It's just meant to put water exactly where the plant's going to grow. As far as how often you water, is one of the things, the challenges of drip irrigation is, if it rains, especially if you have a timer on, it's still going to water. So you still need a certain amount of maintenance. You can buy some high-end water control mechanisms, but at the end of the day, it's going to keep watering. So it's not just, like I said, set it and forget it. You still need to keep an eye on it. Most of what I use here is Rainbird. I'm not a representative Rainbird by any means, but that's what I buy. I've tried to buy a lot of crazy stuff off of Amazon that I would think would work. My advice is, once you stick with whatever brand you're going to buy, stick with that brand. Just give you one example. So these little valves, and I'm so glad I got these valves, because it basically lets me turn these beds on and off. I bought a bunch of valves, and they're not cheap, and I needed 40 of them for these beds. I bought the wrong size, I bought the wrong brand. They didn't match up with the tubing that I bought, which was Rainbird. My advice is, spend a few extra dollars, make sure you get the brand that matches up with whatever you have, and it'll make your life a lot easier. One of the things I'll point out is, you can buy a bunch of basically shut-offs. So at the end of each piece of tubing, you need something to basically pinch off the end. You can buy these, they're a little more expensive, but you just as easily, you can get some zip ties and do the exact same thing for a lot cheaper. My irrigation journey has not finished by any means. I'm learning more all the time. But at the end of the day, if you do it right, and you spend the time in making sure that it's put in properly, it makes your life so much easier. Just like with those ferns that I grew way back in the day. You save water, the plants are healthier, and you have a lot more time in your hands. Yep. And one last thing. So there's a couple of different options that you have. So here is just the basic drip irrigation hose. So each one of these hoses is set up to have a certain amount of flow rate per minute. If you have a plant or something that you basically want to run water to, you can tie in to the main line, which I've done here with the smaller diameter hose, tied in, and then you can get these smaller drip devices here. Different colors are different gallons per minute. So I think this one is 1 gallon per minute. The water shut off here, that's why they're not dripping. But each one has a different gallon per minute. But it is dependent. So the more you hook up to the main water line, like I said, just like plumbing. So the more you hook up to the main water line, the lower your water pressure is going to be as it flows away. So, even for here, the water pressure is going to be highest as we're closest to the main water source. As we get further away, that pressure is going to go down as well as that flow. So for any system you set up, like I said, just like home plumbing, you have to basically look at how the system is functioning and then figure out if you need to make adjustments within the system. But there's all kinds of different packages you can buy online. Like I said, Rainbird's my preference. You buy at Lowe's, you buy it on Amazon, but there's a bunch of different options out there that you can choose.